Hair Day, good. Let's say 403 grad class, pep up. It's Tuesday, right, Caitlin? Right? Okay. Jim, let's talk about, well, the rest of the class, YouTube audience. I'm making my class write these grants using www.cos.com. And I talked about this dichotomy. Oh, here he is. Now we can start. This dichotomy between cash, getting cold cash, and cachet. In your words, Jim, what's the difference? You used to work in the Koch government. You developed whole areas of Brooklyn. What were a couple areas?
Well, I had a public development corporation which got money from the state and from the city, and basically we redeveloped the Gowanus area. I don't know if anybody knows where the Gowanus area is. It's right in the port area, the old Brooklyn port area. It's south of the Heights, Brooklyn Heights. And
it's Smith Street. It's all this like trendy area now.
Right, and there's a port there. And what we did was we developed that area. We're talking about 1980. And
so it belonged to what group of people?
Well, no, it essentially was laid waste. It was just a wasting dump area. People used to dump things into the canal, etc. What we did was we basically started with an area study. Then after the area study, we singled out certain properties, certain areas in that what we call our study area, and those properties would be developed. We asked money from the state and private developers. Now, when you write a grant, I was also a contracts manager for Suffolk County here as well, back in the 70s. So I used to get a lot of grants. I used to distribute a lot of money. Basically, when I worked for the county here, I dealt with towns. In other words, I would deal with the town officials. So my job was to make sure that the jobs were feasible. And so the towns would come in and they say they want to do this or that. The most important thing to me as the contract manager was this: can the job get done? Not if I just have to give money.
So should all of them, I asked all of them to fill a grant for a $5,000 grant, could be on a fictional film, tougher to get, non-fictional, a documentary film, that would be cool, or some media project. How would you say anyone open fire is like, part of what I said, Jim, was like, okay, keep dreaming, or I like the Joseph Campbell quote better, follow your bliss. Because bliss is a pretty good thing to follow. There's a kind of a reality toward bliss that dreaming doesn't have. Follow your bliss, but we don't want to we're solving a problem. You not only worked in real estate, you worked on media projects. We helped Stony Brook form that Florence program. What do we somehow jump to the Z mark and look back and say, oh, here's where we want to be?
Well, basically, I got a couple of, if we're talking about cultural grants and videos, I got a couple of grants working with the Brooklyn Museum. And basically, those grants were documentaries for the neighborhood.
For the neighborhood?
Yeah, the neighborhood.
So it's like making sure what hand is, stroking the other, or whatever the metaphor is. You've got to be attending. Usually when I send my students to cost site, they say, all I see is what I can't be doing. I'm not a New Zealander. I'm not an Australian. I'm not a Canadian. I'm not, I'm not purple with only 3 arms. I'm not this. The identity thing is something we take with a grain of salt.
Well, I think if we were just concentrating on writing grants, what you have to do is a tremendous amount of research. What you have to do on your part is not necessarily the narrative. It's the appropriateness of your particular grant for the grant money that you're asking for. In other words, if you're asking for, let's say what we did with Brooklyn Museum. Brooklyn Museum was very, very interested in having more community participation. So what we did is
There you go, more community participation. So demographers and sociologists can come into this, but the artist and the leader has a hunch that there's a problem out there that they have to fix.
Well, you have to really find out what the funding source really wants. So that's where your research is. You have to
overtly or covertly.
Well,
If the funding source just wants to meet groovy, beautiful people as
it's always
partners, that which you might laugh at, that is sometimes part of the objective. They just want to hang out with people that are young, interesting, and beautiful for whatever reasons. That's a bottom line, Jim. But you, I'm going to say this on YouTube. You actually dealt with you were a liaison between the city and the mafia at one time.
Not really. I mean, not with the mafia. That area was a mafia area. So what happened was essentially everybody knew it was a mafia area. So we had to understand that it was a mafia area and then do what we had to do as far as the city was concerned. For instance, the mafia, if we want to call it that, it's not the mafia, the type of mafia that shoots people. It's the type of organization that's created. There's certain organizations that are linked to mafia people, and mafia people have had interests. So what basically we had to understand is which organization would be against what we were doing because they were influenced by the mafia. We didn't deal directly with mafia people.
No, I didn't. I mean to imply that, but I'm saying
there were certain institutions that we had a problem with. I'm not going to mention those institutions. Okay, so
YouTube.
Yeah. And what we had to do is basically work around that. We had to find a compromise between the interests of these institutions and what we were trying to do. Because we did have meetings with individuals that we knew had influence from the mafia. We were being influenced by the mafia. And what we had to do is, of course, it was like walk a very, very tight path. But we accomplished all of that. If you go down now to
oh, it's gorgeous. Smith Street, one of the highest. Cobble Hill, Smith Street, some of the highest property in New York City.
Right.
You know, I live east of there in Park Slope. But it's, I mean, quality of life is good, except for the expense, all of that. Let's open it up. Jim, let's just open it up. Justine, follow your bliss. What is your bliss? And where is your bliss lying in a problem? I know you were trying to archive. You're specifically working with our wonderful radio station here. I love radio. That whole
90.1.
What?
90.1.
90.1. We're going to put this on the tags. SBU. What's it called? WSBU. WUSB. Kenneth, you work there? You two
No,
work?
Catherine and Kaylee are working with me.
Really? Okay. Oh, here she is. Now we can start. Follow your bliss. Justine, I love that Campbell quote. We're realists. But we're not. We're a combination of Quixote and Panza, right? Panza's the practical steward. Quixote's the dreamer, right? But if they're following a problem, not chasing windmills, what's your tactical objective?
Tactical objective would be to help archive the music as well as
10,000 volumes? How many volumes?
I believe so. It's kind of growing.
Let me give a plug on YouTube. 90, what is it again?
90.1.
90.1 WSBU.
USB.
WSB. Okay, there's only, and radio is important. Practically, they have to archive 10,000 wonderful volumes, digitize vinyl, which has been happening all. It's a worthy cause. Librarians around the world are trying to get this money to do this. What's your hook, Justine? Maybe hit it. I heard a little, but maybe Jim has a little concept behind it. What's your approach to rich folks, corporation, the necessity to digitize this?
I believe the hook is probably going to be twofold in that it's a nonprofit organization that not only includes students and alum, but also volunteers all over the community.
Cool.
So it is a community event, as well as just the way of media and the loss of radio going into the cloud and just us being 21st century and being modern, and they're actually going to redo the student union in 2 years.
Yeah, I saw that. Beautiful building. It's where we had the lunch. They have the radio station. The cloud. Jim, how do we, advice, how do we fund this cloud?
Well, essentially, where are you going to go for the money? Have you singled out any sources for that?
No, I found things that are interesting, but I haven't looked to make sure we qualify for all of them
Okay,
yet.
so you're a nonprofit organization,
We're
correct?
nonprofit.
All right, so generically, I mean, generally you could talk about two sources of income. One would be foundations, one would be public, basically.
Foundations are private shareholders. The Bill and Melinda. Did you specifically look at the Bill and Melinda Gates
I
Fund?
did not look at that.
Okay, look at them because they have another number of archiving issues. Anyone can anyone help them to big up this cause? Big it up. Big it up. American expression for make it loud, make it proud. Big it up, Annika.
That's a tough one. I don't know anything about your radio station, and so I don't know how important it is to fund something like that versus funding a really big radio station doing the same kind of thing. So how big is the radio station?
Well, it's pretty small. It's
Mhm.
student run. Probably most people in the room didn't even know we had a radio station.
No, it's very, Norm was one of the leaders.
What's the content of what you're trying to archive and digitize? What are we looking at? Stuff from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s?
It's a lot of the stuff gets donated. We get boxes and boxes of things donated, and right now it's just being advertised.
And you have to
So
digitize it the right way. Oh, here's a concept. Oh, actually, work study. If you get the right equipment, can you have all the labor in the world? So there's a matching grant possibility.
Yeah, I would definitely.
Look for the matching grant. Tally up these 6 interns and say they are the equivalent of $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. Please give us $7,000 more dollars a month to get a nice piece of equipment to be able to do this right. That's the matching grant. You know, the big success stories on the East Coast, I think, in terms of college stations are Fordham, WFUV, and I listen to that a lot. And then I love the programming FUV, and
That's not really student run. It's
I know, but
so
listen up to the. It's big, but it used to be student run. It started that way, but the big concept. I'm listening to it said, and WFUV is sponsored in part this hour by Steve Martin.
Right.
I was like, Steve Martin, the actor Steve Martin, digs it so much that he's plunking down some cash for it? Sure. Jim, just let's comment over here.
I think that one of the main points that you have to make is that you're making an archive for future generations to learn and listen to. And I think that if you promote that, like the same way you promote a building not getting torn down because of its historical preference, that's the same thing, whether it's music or it's a speech, something like that. You need to archive those things for future generations to have and to learn from. I think that's one of the main points you need to bring up.
Brandy, I like that in the sense that it's that beautiful. I like it, the architecture of this student unit on the outside. It's very pristine according to the 70s. You know, modernist, whatever. They might redo the inside, but there are certain laws that you've got to leave at least the facade up and change the inside. That might, the architectural preservation aspect might be a nice hook for you. We're almost out of time here. Anyone else? Waylon, follow your bliss. What is it? Tactically.
Tactically, following my bliss means going to grad school, making myself employable, learning how to write grants, so that I can fund myself to make Native theater.
Native American theater.
Native American theater.
I love it. Love it.
If I can jump in here, you shouldn't be using the word fund myself. That's dead.
Oh, right. Groups. Always groups.
So
Groups. So
That's
you
one
belong to the group
terminology
of the
never
radio
used.
station.
never
You've
use I'm funding myself.
Waylon, your position right now as a self, I'm sorry, it said follow your bliss. Your bliss is to contribute. And this is why grant writing, for a lot of you, it's a team sport. Because not all of us have a personal 501c3. I do with 2 other people for my business aspect. But Waylon would forge a 501c3, which is a lot of effort. It just jumped through the hoops. It's about $2,000 worth of legal efforts. It's about registering with the state of New York or Delaware. Delaware's user friendly on this, that's why. But Jim is right on this. So Waylon, you are a hired gun for Native groups. You know, maybe even in the area, maybe even the ones out in Southampton say, look, I'm writing grants, use me. You know, and work your agenda through that. We're almost at a stop. That's very interesting because it's a point. I mean, you're covered because you've got the 501c3 right here. the thing I want to impress on the rest of you for any of these projects going through Stony Brook is that you're using the 501c3 number here and so forth. Jim, we're about out of time. Thanks
Thank you very
much.
much. Good luck,
and
everybody.